I was going to go over MIDI roots and talk about a few things that have to do with what works and what doesn't work. So here's the guide's stuff on MIDI root settings. The ignore global transpose settings doesn't happen in solo because it doesn't have a global transpose setting. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Everything else seems to work. So let's go ahead and look at just one of these, the M249. I hope I'm seeing input. Yes, I am. And I'm hearing input. Good. So here it is as it appears in solo. And again, this line here shouldn't even be in here in solo. I'm running solo, the solo license. And so this is sort of like a bug because it's got to ignore global transpose settings, though they don't have global transpose. Do you know about the global transpose?
Nope.
I'll show you where it is. Right here, see TR off? That's global transpose in Performer. Lets you adjust the global MIDI transpose setting. And it affects all of the keyboards, everything. Simply select your typical unison, and you can hit learn. And the way the learn works is you hit any note, the current one, and then you get the new key, and it puts it right in there.
So is this your band's little out of tune? We'll just go down a half step.
Yes, if it's a band's entirely out of tune, all thanks to them tuning into the guitar player. Like, because you got there late. So they all tuned to the guitar player, who didn't bring his auto tune. This happens.
It's going to mess with all your key switches, though, are also going to be out of step as well, right?
That's a good question. I suppose it must. Yeah, it must. Now, you probably maybe you could transpose a range. So you could create a key range and have it ignore, you don't transpose that key range. Yeah. We'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, so that's global transpose. And I've never used it, I admit. And probably never will. Because, I have a 5-octave range, so I just adjust. You're all supposed to look skeptical or something at this point. Yeah, I'm a virtual male Minnie Ripperton. They call me Manny Ripperton. All right, enough of the musician jokes already. I'm going to get sued, causing illnesses. Okay, so here we are. We're back in solo. So yes, we have the transpose in here, and that's what that override lets you ignore the globals so that you're transposing related to that. And you can set up lowest note and highest note that's involved, and that's where you're talking about your key switches here, because you can go above, you can make your lowest note that you're going to have this effect on be a higher note, and like have it start with C1 and up, and now you're only transposing those. Okay, so that handles the key switch issue. Learn mode lets you do as you saw there, where you click your bottom note, you click in here, and you can it'll learn your notes. Okay, so put it in learn mode, click there. There we go. Here's my lowest note, C2 on that thing. And yeah, so learn mode, you click in there, you hit the note, and you click in there and hit the high note, and it learns it. And you click in here, and you click the, with learn mode turned on, you click the first note, and then the second note, and it learns it. Anyhow, notes only, suppress all other events is like a instant filter, and so you don't have to create the filter to do it. Notes only routes note and aftertouch events, and all other events like controllers are suppressed. So useful when you have two separate note ranges mapped using two roots on one instrument, and by selecting that setting, one of the root to the target instrument will only get one set of controller events. So you see what the idea is. It's if you're splitting up your keyboard, you don't want and you're sending half the keyboard to one synth, for instance, that you don't want to get the controller, or maybe it's a different channel on the same synth, like a contact instrument. You don't want it receiving controller twice, and so you could tell it that for that particular route, you don't want it to be sending the controller again. These mod wheel is what I'm trying to say, mod wheel. And then you can show the range on the virtual keyboard down below with a color, so that you can see what colors you're talking about if you need that graphical interface. Let's go ahead and show the on-screen keyboard. And so yeah, it would show a color down here. Oh, I gotta check the box, don't you? There we go. So now you see the range that I've selected.
There we go.
So let's diminish this thing a little bit. We're still in the Alesis. Okay, so let's turn on learn mode. There we go. So now we've cut it down. So there's the actual range of a normal 49 key keyboard in normal mode. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, leave that on. Now where this to me is, I mean, I use this every single time I turn on the machine and add a new keyboard. I'm always routing it to various channels. You have to do this, for instance, if you're routing, and this is a case for that only wanting one mod wheel. Let's say you're doing an organ. Organs are usually two registers, right? Two keyboards on it, and so you'll send channel. You'll set whatever the low channel is, the low MIDI channel, and the next channel up will be usually the lower keyboard, correct? Well, that's how keyboards work, you flute players. Yeah, I'm a flute player too, so. But I'm a crossover flute
You're
player.
a flautist.
Yeah, flautist. Yeah.
A flutie.
Yeah, flutie. Well, I never liked the word flautist, you know.
Never did.
I never liked that word.
All
Sounded
wrong.
too flatulent to me.
Yeah. Flautista.
Flautista.
Flute folk.
I'm more like a fleva, kind of a diva that plays flute. Oh my gosh,
spare
people
you
are
all the
tuning out left and right. You know, we got people this far into the webinar.
This better make it onto the YouTube video.
So, oh my gosh, I'm glad keyboardists are the main audience for this. That's all I can say. Okay, so yeah, so oftentimes you'll need to set up one of your keyboards to be the upper bank of keys. There's a word for that. Corky, what's the darn word for the upper and the lower?
Register?
Upper and lower. Yeah, it's register.
It is register. Oh, okay. For some reason, I started thinking register was the wrong word, but yeah, registers, yes. And this guy playing church organ since he was 15, you know, it's like sick. I don't ever use the word, so use it or lose
I
it.
don't either.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
that
just play the
that
darn.
the one up top and the one underneath it.
That's how I go.
Yeah. So usually you'll have two keyboards on your setup in your rig, and you want one keyboard to hit the top one. And then of course you have the bass pedals too, if you're so lucky as to have bass pedals. And a lot of these keyboards come with a bass pedal, even though nobody's using them much. But nonetheless, you need 3 MIDI input devices, 3 controllers, or a split keyboard, addressing it on different MIDI channels in order to pull that off. So that's where you would bring your keyboards in on one or on Omni, but you bring it in on one and send it to one, and then send the other one to 2, and then for the foot pedals you would send it to 3. And this is a perfect example where you don't want all 3 keyboards sending their controllers, their mod wheel. You just want one of your keyboards to be in control of that kind of stuff. And so you would click on the ignore the notes only for that. But it still sends aftertouch, and if you find that useful, you can, on some of these, sometimes you can use a MIDI translator, like that free bunch of the PIS MIDI group that lets you convert aftertouch into controller one, into a mod wheel, for instance, if you find that useful. If you like using pressure to turn your Leslie on and off, for instance, that might be a handy thing.
What is that again? What is that again? That is it an app? What is that?
Oh yeah, PIS, P-I-Z, MIDI, M-I-D-I, is a free collection of MIDI translators that you can use as filters, MIDI filters, and you can load them in as if they were an instrument. And
Right, and they create a new MIDI port. Then you link to that MIDI port.
Or you can send your MIDI from the keyboard into that as if it was an instrument.
Right.
And the output will be the converted controller. Right. But we have that capability in the filters too. We can convert aftertouch to controller. So, but PIS MIDI gives you its huge range of different MIDI translators. It's insane, and it's a free collection. I think it's donationware. And there's also the free Bohm Translator Classic, which is postcardware. He just wants you to send a postcard from wherever you are. For that
postcard?
Postcard. You know, postcard. Picture postcard, yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Postcardware.
Mm-hmm. So I like these unique ways of getting compensated for people, by people for their software. And of course, with Voice Meter being donationware, you pay whatever you want. Okay, so then we get into a very useful velocity curve. Now, on my keyboards, several of them have velocity curve settings built in that I can set, like especially the complete control ones from Native Instruments have that built in. But many of my others don't have any control over the velocity curve at all. And there's lots of times where I wish I had, like, I don't want a velocity curve. It's just for an organ type thing, you know. I don't want it to be dealing with velocity. It's on off, please. And so there you can set this super high and just have on off, and have the minimum output always be 127. Gotcha. And then for the other uses, say you're playing piano and you find that the range is too soft, where you're used to really hitting hard, then you might want to do a compression. See, do I have that right? Anyway, you can compress and expand in here too. You think, let's see, I'm pressing really hard, hitting hard all the time. Then I would want these settings, my min input, max input, to be pretty high most likely, and then set a lower output in order to squeeze it down. Or if I play really soft all the time, then I'm going to want to have my normal input, or even compress this down to where like 100, and have the output be really extreme, where I bring up the minimum so that it never sends less than a 20, for instance. So when I'm hitting really soft, I'm always sending at least a 20. I used to do that all the time. I would get so into the pianissimo thing that I'd have disappearing notes. So, triple pianissimo, heck with that. Give me 6, give me 7 Ps. So, yeah. So, you know, extreme people like myself are extreme. What can I say? And then you can adjust the curve. And so this is also super useful for that type of situation where you're doing, where it's just not the right curve for you. It may be okay response-wise, but the way that you're hitting it is not increasing fast enough. So you find yourself pounding. And so a setting like this would make one type of pounding, and this would make another type of pounding. And so you just adjust it and find your taste. And what we're doing is we're expanding, compressing in this case, but you can also do what it's called enhance, which does this kind of action.
Bezier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, that's the one that.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Never hit that button.
Yeah. This keeps you out of the weeds of setting min-max output because it's doing a instantaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the
Maneuver.
one here that I have to use with flute because the problem I have was when I play very softly, you get granularity at the bottom end, and you can hear it going in steps till it disappears. So I have to use exactly the other curve that you just showed.
Oh, this one, huh?
That one, yeah.
No kidding.
So that at the very bottom end, it
I
goes
use
smoothly into silence.
I use that on
Ah.
a hi-hat, so it's open slower.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I've heard that.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Neat. Now, here's a mysterious one to me. I've never used it, but maybe you can suggest some uses you can think. Only route this when the program is active. So, program number means you sent an actual program number from your controller. It doesn't mean which one of these you just picked from the set list. It doesn't mean which state you picked. It means an actual program number has arrived somewhere, somehow. It could arrive from a binding, perhaps, but a program number has shown up and made a change. So, so this makes it that the route is turned off if that program is active. Now, I've not used it, but I can because I use states, but this is in solo now. And so I can see where this could be really handy because it enables you a state-like behavior to turn these outputs on and off. I believe that this is dealing with these check marks and that it only routes if that program is active. So
And it remembers the last program change that was sent on that channel?
apparently, I don't know. I've never used it. Has anyone ever used it here?
Yeah, I used it before I got Performer, and it works exactly like you say, that if it's the last program number is the one indicated, then it's active. Otherwise, it becomes inactive.
Okay. So anything other than 0, I guess, if I hit it to 3, then this becomes inactive. I expected this to be unchecked.
Now I think it's the filter, because yeah, and I don't think it works on the check mark though, as like state does, but I'm not sure.
But it simply
I can't
doesn't
remember.
pass. It just doesn't pass anything. Well, look, yeah, for sure, it's not passing right now. See, the second light shows that whether it's passing through. It shows that something's coming in, but nothing's passing through.
Exactly.
So let's try 0. So I'm not sure, actually. Now I'm not sure what patch I've got is coming through. There we go. There's 0. Okay, cool. So it worked. And the indicator is that the light stops flashing. That's how you know to test it. Okay. So there we go. Constant discoveries around here. And then the other condition is only route when a certain CC is seen. So this would only route if I actually see a CC that's greater, like my mod wheel is over 64. So that's kind of curious. Or I could send 7. My volume, it only kicks in if the volume is over a certain amount. And so, again, watching let's see, yeah. Nothing. There it goes. That was mod wheel. Okay. So that's kind of really cool. I can see that, especially with mod wheel, because I use a couple synths that do crossover driven by the mod wheel. They don't just do low frequency oscillator tremolo. They do 2 layers that they change the mix based on the mod wheel. And to have another synth kick in to be a part of that layer when it reaches a certain spot on the mod wheel, I could find very useful for building intensity and making a crescendo effect. Or just having it disappear when I turn it down, and to get rid of the, darn, what's the word for D crescendo? Decrescendo. Yeah, I'm losing it. So anyway, so these are very, very cool things that I see everybody, of course, uses this top 2 rows all the time. Some people do splits, some people do transposes. Now, another place that this is super useful is when the instrument that you're dealing with, as far as the transpose, when the instrument that you're going to be sending to in that song is in a super low range, and you have a 49 key keyboard or even a 25 key keyboard that you're playing that with. Like say you're using some tubas, then you don't want to be jumping on your keyboard and having to hit that button to shift your keyboard down. You would prefer to just have it do the transpose when you load the song and already have the tubas getting the keyboard in the correct range. So that's an awesome use. When you're using your flute controller, you don't want to have to be dealing with that darn switch all the time to switch into your octaves using the wind controller. So this way, as soon as you switch to that instrument, you're in the correct range to just play in your normal range. Yep.
Hey, Terry.
Yeah.
Terry, I'll use my expression pedal with the ball velocity curve, and I set it for different settings for different whatever I'm playing. It works real well.
With the expression pedal.
Yes. So it's like a separate device there, and I send it into that, and then I can control the velocity curve for whatever instrument I'm playing. So if it's an organ, I may have it set one way, and if I'm using it for just a volume pedal for a guitar or something, then I have it different. It's good. It's a good way to set up your expression pedal if you have it separate.
Oh, I gotta try that. So which one of these curves would you use most likely for an expression pedal type use? Would you use this enhance curve?
Yes, I've used it. It's really according what I'm using it for.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'll go from if you're using it as a volume pedal, it would be like real easy at the beginning, and then all of a sudden midway it just kicks up all of a sudden, and that really changes the dynamics and everything.
Oh, yes.
It's a much smoother flow getting to the volume.
Okay.
And I use it in the organ a lot.
That curve it's on right now would help with that. Not as sensitive at the bottom, and then like as you get to the top, it goes quicker.
Well, actually, this is it. This is not as sensitive at the bottom. Yeah.
That's it.
Right. Yeah, I'm upside down.
And then it goes real quick in the middle. I could see that for like using your expression pedal for a wah-wah pedal. This would be a nice curve.
Yeah. That too, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's something that always has frustrated me is the curve is never really felt right using it as a wah-wah.
Well, and I've had a lot of problem with it as a volume pedal also for just a keyboard or whatever, and it just, I'm playing piano and then it's just real good at the low point. You get mid and all of a sudden it kicks up real high, and so I adjusted to compensate for everything.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's excellent application for sure. Does anyone else use this little box for very much stuff?
Not yet, but after today, definitely.
Yeah, I'm feeling that way too. I'm definitely going to start using these two. Now, the place I can find having the most difficulty using this dialogue is probably picking which color I really want for down here. It's like, yeah, yellow's a little too bright for me. It's like be distracting. And lime, it's just, I don't know. That's maybe just me.
I'm bright. Try olive.
Olive? It won't even show up. Yeah, where's olive? There you go. Oh, well, actually, it's kind of muted. It's kind of, yeah, that's nice. I never would have even thought of trying olive. In fact, I just realized I love olive. Okay. Jeez.
Popeye.
Nobody's got a rim shot around here? Okay, let's see. I want it enhanced with an enhanced curve on that rim shot. Well, all right. Well, that's the primary discussion I had concerning this. The big thing I wanted to point out was using it to have various keyboards controlling the same VST, and that's why you would say notes only on certain keyboards that are going to that same VST. Because there's no need to have its controllers wasted on that VST when you might be able to use that controller's mod wheel, for instance, for a different VST that you're layering. You know what I mean? So, and that's another big use of this. Right here, you'll see I'm doing layers big time. All of that's playing at once. So I got Serge Labs, Polanski, and Tyrell all sounding at once. Now I might not be wanting my mod wheel to be affecting all of these, and so that's where I could turn off the mod wheel going to one of them and just say notes only, please. So this keeps me out of the world of filters because it's very quick and fast. I can set it up very quickly, just go down. Now, there's a certain stage where the bindings might also offer some possibilities here. I'll grab a button from here or a controller. And so let's see what kind of switches we've got, if we have any, in the, well, let's see, main keyboard, enabled, transpose. So you can turn it on and off. You can enable and disable using a switch from your controller. You can change the transpose up and down. So there's things you have access to from the bindings that are inside that dialog, which is pretty neat. I think you can even learn a key range using controllers, buttons. That's awesome. Learn a key range, learn a transpose, and even clear a transpose right from your controller. That's pretty nice. Transpose up and down, or octave up and octave down. I can see that using that a lot. But enabled and disabled is just another great use where you just want to get that keyboard out of the system. And they're called main keyboard 1, 2, 3, 4 at the moment. I suppose I could. No, you can't change the names. Oh, I thought you might be able to change the names. I'd have to. Okay, but it's got main keyboard 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's enough to go by. So I know that whatever I'm doing in the bindings, I'm affecting them in the order that they appear. Alrighty. So in a sense, they're being treated like objects. They're treated by their position in the list, I would guess. So let's go ahead and learn a button from this. We'll use that. Okay, and let's see if it enables or disables. There we go. Enable, disable, like a toggle. That makes me happy. Let's change the keyboard 4. It should be the last one. Always good to test these things. And sure enough, it's the 4th one. So it's treating it by position in the list. That's how it does the numbering. All right, great. What other little controls might you have in there over that? Well, I think that's plenty enough. Plenty enough as far as the routing is concerned. So it gives me some controls over the routing things. And of course, you can duplicate this and have one button do multiple things, etc. I love this octave up, octave down. I'm definitely going to set things up for that. See, I have all these darn pads that I never use. And we just used a pad. This is a pad note that I just used to do this controller. It'd be a great use for the octaves. All righty. Now, the reason I get kind of excited about that is because filters, I don't believe filters are accessible from bindings, many of them, are they? At least not in solo. Well, let's take a look at a couple. And look, oh, look at this. There's a, put a filter in there. Oh, what do you know? Oh, this is that one that we did the other day when we figure out that way to make the one button walk through the different things. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. That was pretty cool. Okay, let's go back to this Alesis. Let's add. Now here you have all of these things, the aftertouch to controller map, that we were talking about before, which I have tried with the Leslie, but I found I thought I would like it a lot more than I did, and I don't know. I think I almost broke my hand pressing down. I want that Leslie now, and it overdid it. But I know it might just be because it was new to me, and I'm not used to the touch that would bring it about. So, but that's a kind of a cool thing to even have available. I tend to use the mod wheel or a slider for that, or the foot pedal, especially the foot pedal, expression pedal. I use the expression pedal all the time for that. So if there's a Leslie in the system, there's always an expression pedal assigned to it, which makes for some pretty comedic poses at times, because I got my foot on that expression pedal and I'm stretching over here and reaching over there at the same time. Yeah, that looks
Better than
funny.
yoga.
Yeah, better than yoga. So taking a look at this list here, I don't think I can pull up bindings now. Yeah, I can. Okay, so taking a look at this list, when I hit the add, what kind of things do we have bindings? Just in solo, mind you, solo doesn't have as many bindings. Well, there's suppress events we already found we've got that already in the routing to suppress all but notes after touch.
I think you're still in the routing with the filters you're looking at.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of filter connections we had in bindings from one of these. And it doesn't look like there's a whole lot in that direction, coming from the keyboard. You got these guys, but no filtery types of things. You know what I'm saying? Not from this as an output. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place.
If you want to enable or disable a route, then you give it a name and create a binding for that. But my idea was that you might need to have that name to be able to get to the filter.
I got you.
Route.
I got you. For that controller. So I'd have to start in here, and that's where there's some way. How do we give this a name again? Is that
F2?
Huh?
You can press F2.
Oh, F2, really? There it is. Well, that's main keyboard 4, so that's how we change it. Now, where did it tell me that? I never knew this stuff. Okay, F2.
I didn't know you could rename it from there. That's handy.
F2, of all things. Like I ever press my F keys to find out what they can do. I don't know. I'm such a dunce. I've been using computers since DOS, and I never use my F keys for anything. I think it's a disease. So this is where you would give it its own special name. But main keyboard, where does this go into? Tyrell. Well, now that I've done that, though, this is where it's going to show up in the bindings as an output, I take it. Main keyboard, Tyrell. So that's where the name is changed. But again, I still only have these as the capabilities. It's interesting that it did name the others, you know, it gave the others names just by the virtue of me adding them up here in the routing. It did name those by itself behind the scenes. And here's another interesting thing, mapping, normal and inverted. It's neat. For enabled. So the first key press would enable and second would disable, I guess, in that case. No, but so in Performer, it's the same thing, same list? You're saying?
Yeah, as far as I can see.
Okay. Well, anyhow, it's still really nice to know that we have the capability of doing that from a button press, especially enabled, disabled. And that's where we did that fancy filter. It's another place you can see doing layers of filters, like we did over here in this one, where you could have certain things. Also, you could throw in a suppress, a turn off when you get to certain places. Certain number of key presses gets you to one that turns it off. Like when you hit number 4, that makes it go off because, or you could make it like we were seeing where the output only exists if a certain program number is achieved. And since we're sending program numbers, program changes, that could affect that using a button. So, but why bother if you can just do the enabled, disabled thing from the controller right in the bindings. So anyway, I find that to be a real useful idea. Getting it somewhat automated using the various filters just adds another layer of interest to the whole thing. Okie dokie. Well, let's go into some filters and start staring at some more ones that we have not even touched on. We got the easy stuff. Button bank, uninitialized button bank. Has anyone played with this one yet? Bank A controllers, base, multiplier. Oh my gosh, this looks deep. Deep. So does anyone?
I tried it. I never really got it to work. It got really, really complicated in my mind.
Base and multipliers for 2 banks of controllers, and somehow this is the big challenge. We're given these opportunities to do the noodling to figure it out. Well, I guess this probably is going to deserve its own little discovery session one of these days. But I never even noticed that till I just was looking at the list. Channel map is pretty easy. It's just mapping channels to each other. You can do various learn modes and stuff like that. Why would we use this one if it's already built into the routing? Do you think?
You could use it if you had a number of filters, one after another, and then needed that for something in between that.
In between, yep.
Yeah. Most of the mappings, as I remember, you can do that. That is part of all the filters. You can do that as part of that mapping anyway. So I don't know why this would be specifically needed. But I discussed these filters with Brad at some point, and some of them are leftovers from version 2 and are just kept to be backward compatible. And
Gotcha.
some of them are made specifically because one user had a very specific need, and Brad just said, "Well, I can do that," and
yeah, presto change would appear, right? Yeah, abracadabra.
I got that too when I needed the.
That's what I think every time I look at one of these things. I don't know. I always say, "Who needed this?"
Yeah, who needed this for what? Well, I can definitely see that channel map. Like you were saying, if you've got like what we have in that one example, we have 4 different filters in a sequence and have the last one be to now send it somewhere else. Like we needed the first ones to be doing something or other in specific channels, and now we need the final result to send out to a certain channel for some reason, maybe to trigger a different filter or a different input. Oh, it's curious stuff. Channel select looks, suppress all channels except certain one. I guess if you're coming in with Omni and you didn't do it up here, there must be a use case where that was useful. And you needed to definitely only have one channel. But maybe they didn't have this routing up here back in version 2. Like you're saying. Could be. What else we have that's mysterioso for us to contemplate? Controller latch. Well, that we used before. But the fascinating thing about controller latch is we didn't know how that worked with the commas. That you could put in any sequence of values in any order, and they could be up and down, they can be above each other and below each other, and all over the place, and that they will latch based on when they get their signal. That's really, really cool. So, get that out of there. Controller map this is probably the most used one of any of them. I'll bet you this wins the prize because everyone's always wanting to reassign one of those darn controllers, mod wheel especially, or volume, or in my case, foot pedal, because my wave station outputs a foot pedal thing from its foot pedal, and change it to something else. I've got one of those FCB 1010s, Behringer foot devices, and one pedal sends mod wheel, and the other pedal sends like 22, controller 22. It's like, so, I never ever would need 22 for anything directly, but it gives me this base kind of pedal I can always reassign in here and send it to something else. Send it to 7, for instance. So I can have my mod wheel right next to my volume pedal. How many of you use 11 for expression?
Oh, all the time.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you use 11 versus 7? I never quite got that straight in my head.
It's the default in the organ modules.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I use 7 to set the volume that is the maximum level. Then I use the expression pedal to work within that. But I would expect Corky could maybe add something about how you get overdrive to work in a hammer using the expression
pedal.
Yeah.
Did you see that last thing that I posted on the presets?
I need to reread that. Sorry.
That one I set it specifically to go in with your expression pedal, and as you push it in, it's not a volume. As you push it in, it adds more distortion to the instrument, so it works more like a real Hammond does. So
Yeah, that sounded great. I tried it 2 days ago or 1 day ago, and really works great.
Yes.
You keep your volume. It's kind of like clean sound,
Yeah.
and then when you start pressing down, it just grinds, more.
Oh,
great.
So you're using 11
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, I didn't look at how it's being done. I just loaded it up and started playing.
I just set it up. I just set it up, and I didn't go into any CC numbers or anything. I just set the thing up where it would act like it was supposed to act as a natural Hammond. I mean,
Right.
that's what you get. The expression pedal, you push it, it gets more gain to, or more grit.
More,
to it, really.
yeah, more grit because it's overdriving the input on the. Yeah.
You back off the pedal a little bit, and you got a super clean organ, and it can have different levels of grit through that pedal. So
yeah, that whole last batch was really great. They're real useful patches for kind of all around rock playing, I guess.
Awesome.
it's
Well, let's see. We got controller map. Controller to node is an interesting one. Well, you have a controller and going to certain notes, and this again is, I don't know, 64, 78. A controller's playing your notes for you, I guess, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I guess you could play like open and close hi-hat and just do the mod wheel.
Oh, that's true. Or you could make a harp glissando.
Right.
A whole bunch of these. And hit a slider and go bling.
Yeah, you need to have the same number of controllers as nodes. There's one controller for each node.
Oh, is that what this is? It's not a controller. So these are actual controllers.
Yes.
And oh, so it's
So
as
that
if.
is,
Oh, so
that
I
is why
would.
it says that there's an error.
Oh, okay, so I'd have to make those switches, most likely. Like 18, 19. And then have those go to my various notes. Correct? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right, cool. What do you know? All right. Oh, also controller to program map. That's just set a CC number. I like again 22 button. Controller program change on all channels. So I see a button, set the program CC in the next program CC in the previous. So this is just going up and down. Get it? It's just sending something to your instrument. Like I find this really useful on hardware sense.
It is that if you send CC22, it will get mapped into a program change 22.
Gotcha.
And then if you have a next program and a previous program CC, then you can use them to move up and down from the 22. So the 22 is
it's your base.
Kind of, yes, exactly.
Like the index. Okay.
You initialize it using the 22, and then you can move around from that.
Okay. And duplicate event. What's duplicate event about?
It's basically that if you send the CC22 and it is not duplicated, then it disappears after the mapping to the program change has been made. If you want to duplicate it, then it will send the program change 22, but you will also get the CC22 afterwards. So that is, again, if you have more than one filter in a row, then you can reuse the same event exactly as you do in bindings.
Gotcha. And so it's like a pass-through. It passes
Yes.
that event through to the next filter that you want to use it in. Oh, great. So you could have a series even of the same thing and have to going to different channels. So this retains it so that I could put in another one, map controller. So I could map the program map again, and now it hasn't been filtered out. My 22 is still available to me. That's what you're saying. And I could be sending on a different channel to a different synthesizer and still have 21 and 23 available to me. So I haven't lost them. They didn't get filtered out because they became program changes. Correct?
Yes, only have the same when you say pick the channel, then it is the input channel you select, and the new channel a little down is the channel where you want to send it.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so send this group to this channel, and then it passes through the controller, so it's still available. Rather than changing it just to a program change, I take it.
It is from the first one, when it says duplicate, then it gets sent to the second one, and then the second one.
So this one, I'd keep 22, but be sending to a different channel.
Yeah.
Oh.
That is receiving from a different channel. The sending is a new channel.
Uh-huh. Right.
And then you can, if you select duplicate event now, it will also continue.
In a hardware sense, they often have program maps built in where you set up how you're going to have your layers go. And so you have the program number 22 in the map be the instrument you want on that layer, and on the other synth you'd have 22 position being the instrument you want also included as a layered instrument, right? And so you'll have them kind of in step already. And so this makes it so that you can select whatever that base starting point is and do next and previous with those program maps that you've set up in your hardware synth. You know, program maps is something you don't see in VSTs very often. But in a way, we get them with Cantabile because we can put any sounds in any order when we're creating a memorized snapshot type. Up in here, these can be any order. They don't have to be in any order that they were in the preset list. And so in this essence, you're making a program list up here using that. These respond to program input as well. So with this being program 0, program 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I had changed my filter so that number 3 or 2 for the third one would send and use controller 2 to send that. But that's a little odd. Let me think. Well, I would just set it up where I had some upper programs for the way that these drop-down lists were created. But that's kind of a neat thing that actually translates the controller number into a program number. Because the reason I see that as being curious is that, of course, you have no control over what the switches are on your controller. But you could have a filter before this controller map, and this is where you can make any controller be any other controller in order to send it to this setup. Correct? So this way I could make any of my buttons that I've got around. Could take number 18, my first switch, and oh look, and then output it to 22 to whatever program number it was I wanted to start this whole sequence with. And now that hitting 18 is going to convert it to 22. Now 22, program 22 is going to go out there, and I'll have these two, and I can map more buttons either side of 18 or somewhere else on the thing to go to previous and next. Okay. Well, this is where filters gets really interesting. It's because of the way the layer logic starts to work out. It's like working a Chinese puzzle, wooden puzzle. You have to really get familiar with what the different things can do so that you start thinking of what kind of conversions you might have to do to feed that filter, like I just had to do. Okay, so anyway, the Huey is a version of the Mackie controller that was very ultra simplified, and I don't see it in use very much anymore. Do you? Okay, key range. This is where you can set up a key range, and we're suppressing all out of range notes. So this is how you, for those real specialists that like to show off, this is how you turn your 88 key keyboard into a 25 key keyboard and still manage to pull off an entire show just with 25 keys. So you guys keep at it and I'll watch. But yeah, that's what that's for. I take it is suppressing all out of range notes. Or you can just make it so notes only, no controllers, and suppress those. Now what's passed through original then?
Same as duplicate, just another name. It's the same as the duplicate. It's just another wording.
I gotcha. Same as duplicate, gotcha. So it's passing it through to the next filter. You get the full range of the keyboard on without the suppressions. So that you can suppress anew. So now I could add a suppress events, and suppress a whole bunch of different things for a different channel, for instance. Correct?
Yeah.
All right.
And there are two other filters that does nearly the same as this one. So that when it gets really confusing, I think.
Mm-hmm. What I often do is I'll isolate my notes from my controller so that I have a controllers only version of the input. And so I allow no notes and I suppress 0 controllers. And that way I might suppress aftertouch as well. So now, that input only is used for its controllers, and none of that input goes to anything but the notes, and the aftertouch are using a different one that I switch these around, and I switch this to suppress and that one to allow in the next one. So let me show an example here, an actual real world example. Oh, this is another thing we should be discussing actually. That in the settings for the MIDI ports, you can change aspects about it. So like here I've got MPK 249 controllers, for instance. You double click it or hit the edit button and you get MIDI filters. And you'll see I've got that very thing, allowing no notes, suppressing no controllers, allowing everything else but notes to go through. And I could take the aftertouch out. And channel pressure, get rid of those. So those are also suppressed. So now this particular input that is called MPK 249 controllers just sends controller information. So that way I can use the keyboard part just to send notes to some instrument, but use its many controllers to assign in custom ways to different instruments, so that I have all those slider banks and stuff available to me where they're not affecting the instrument I'm playing. And I can still then take the controller's output and send some of them to the instrument that I'm playing. It's just a matter of making copies of these things. And the keys I didn't do any suppressions on. A little scary, I would say, for most people, the fact that all the same MIDI filters are available right at the keyboard definition region. But you don't have to have only one keyboard definition per keyboard machine, per piece of hardware. You can have one piece of hardware with several different definitions, and they'll show up here, and with different filters and everything going on. So that's why I have the 249 keys or 249 controllers, and of course 249 pads, because they're on a different MIDI channel. But the controllers lets me just send the controllers, let's say, to labs, and send the keyboard itself out to TX81Z. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Map all events to MIDI channel. That's what I was thinking of. In the definition, you can make it so that no matter what comes in as that it's always going to send out 4. It's always going to, because that's its MIDI channel. It's set on the hardware is MIDI channel 4. So I don't want anything coming in, Omni, I want to be rechannelized to channel 4. And that's true of all of these. This is on channel 7, so I need it to be all events always go to 7. Okay? But mostly that applies to hardware synths that have a set channel built into the hardware receive channel. And that, again, that would be for outputs, like here. This is an output TX81Z. And so when I'm sending to it, it's going to come in and it's just going to go out to Omni out, but I know it's going to be rechannelized at the, at the device. That if something's coming in, it gets it at that particular device. I have 2 of these devices, and so I'm just sending to upper and lower, which have that definition. One gets channel 6, one gets channel 7. on their own respective ports. So it did key range to note. Map this key range on all channels to C4. Now you all know what that's for, right? That's for people who want to sound like they're a bass player playing just one note through the entire song. Isn't it? That's what it is. Dung 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 dung. Instead of tapping the same note, you have like 4 or 5 notes that you can play this one
You
note.
could use it for a conga.
For a conga too, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use it a lot for drums. In fact, a lot of drum mappings already have several notes going to the same samples. For that very reason, it's a lot easier to play. You could split up your keyboard so that you have certain ranges for different parts of the song. So you could do the Supreme song. Bum 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 ba dum bum ba dum ba dum ba bum 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 ba dum bum. I need love, love, love. That stuff. So and then just have another part of the keyboard mapped to a different note that you're repeating. So you could tell I can't play bass with my fingers at worth beans, or I wouldn't even be relying on this kind of flaky fallbacks. So you'll forgive me, bass players. Oh, you won't? Okay, well, I don't blame you. Alrighty, there we go. Okay, so that was note map. Pitched velocity ramp. Well, pitched velocity ramp. This is going to ramp up my velocity as a ramp, so that the higher I go, the louder it gets. Sound right? Or I could go the other way. The higher I go, the quieter it gets. This sounds like also something you would use in conjunction with maybe another filter too. But that's what that's feeling like to me. So adjust velocity to, so this definitely would be, say, 127. And now we've got something that changes. The higher up I go, the louder it gets. Correcto?
Yeah, if you have a certain range on your keyboard that is more sensitive than others, then you can adjust it using this one.
Oh, part of your keyboard's more sensitive? You mean
Yeah,
less?
that was the intention, at least for Brad, as I understood it. That if you have something that is more or less sensitive, I don't know how that would happen, but then you can adjust a certain part of the keyboard to be more responsive.
Oh, what do you know? Like you had a dead note that just got pounded too much.
No, I did that with one of my 88 keys. I blew it out, the rubber pieces inside of it, so they were constantly louder than the rest of the piano. And I had to go in. Actually, I don't think that was available at the time because me and Dave Dorr and the other Torsten were trying to figure it out, and I had to use one of the Piz things to make it work. But I could tone them down. They had just one velocity on it. I mean, no aftertouch, everything. It's just loud.
Hmm.
It's right dead center in the keyboard. So I did that and put it in my controller, and my controller goes out to the Piz thing, and then it worked just fine. It did great.
Mm-hmm. Just quieted it
It kept
down.
me from having to repair those. Yeah, made them more normal. But every time I'd strike one of those 2 or 3 keys in there, it was just louder than the rest of the keyboard.
Gotcha. Well,
Drove me
actually, that
nuts.
happens. That happened for a while on my K5000S. Then A key, just you'd hit this A and come out. Blah. I'm an
Yeah,
A.
you blew out one of those little rubber pieces in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got an XP80 with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try that.
Neat. So there we go. We're fixing our keyboards too.
Yeah.
I should charge extra. Okay.
10% more.
Yeah. Okay, that's the program map, of course. We take a program 1, take 4. When it gets a 4, I hate that patch. And so it switches it to 10, correct? Or look at even down a new channel to a
Is
completely
that kind of
different
a
synth.
hardware system?
Yeah, I hit source program on 1, right? Apply to channel 1. And I'm playing along fine till I get to that program 4, and then I switch over and get out of the TX81Z and switch it to the ESQ. That's clever. And it sends channel 10, program 10. That's amazing. Golly, stuff to write home about.
Yeah, one difference on this one from the controller map. The controller map can also map program changes, but this one can also handle banked program changes. The controller map can only handle normal program changes,
Okay.
not banked.
But this one I can put in bank 1, patch 20. It's period, that's right. There you go. So there you go, bank 1, patch 20 to bank 3, patch 23. There you go. Neat. That's program map. So that's the big difference is that it lets you use banks. All right, sostenuto, huh? Now, what the heck are they talking about here? If you have a sostenuto pedal? Or does it, what's it do?
It is just a sostenuto. Yeah. I think Brad wrote a blog post about it. It keeps the note that we're playing. The way a sostenuto pedal works on a piano is that you play some notes and hold them down. Then you press the sostenuto pedal. Then you can release the notes, but they will still sound.
So you can leave them to go get the higher notes while those are sustaining. Yeah.
Yeah. I use it sometimes when I play a ragtime or especially playing a satie on a piano. Then the sostenuto is really convenient for the bass notes that you can have as drone below the other chords.
Yeah.
But I can't figure out how to activate it. I mean, I won't be able to turn it on and off.
Yeah.
This one, so.
There's got to be a way. It can't just be a permanent setting on because you have to bring it on somehow. Well, we're going to find out, aren't we?
And I think there's a blog post about it or something about the new features.
Oh, this is a new
somewhere.
feature. You see, that's why we're mystified. It's new. It's new stuff. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll find out for Wednesday. Sticky note is very nice. I finally got rid of those heavy cigarette lighters and pieces of lead weights and stuff like that I used to have to use for those matchbooks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd stick between two notes to, yeah.
You know, there's only one way to have sustain on an organ.
I've seen many players use matchbooks, I'm telling you.
Uh-huh.
Billy Preston did a lot of that.
Oh, yeah? You'd keep it. That's how you sustain that one low note and play over the top.
No, the high note. You get the high note.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's up the Leslie with that thing singing at you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, yeah, it's kind of cool that's built in. And you have a master release note that is what lets it go finally. And that could be like your lowest note on the keyboard if you're not using that much, or the highest note. And, or you can use a CC to get rid of it. So you can have a button on your keyboard to get rid of it and make it stop. Make it stop! So, yeah, it's an awesome thing. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago. Everybody was clamoring for that, if I remember. Mm-hmm. So let's see. Suppress events is the other biggie. So between controller map, and suppress events. These have to be the Pulitzer Prize winners of filters. I think everybody has used one time or another. And again, they got to suppress and enable. Okay. Interesting that you might want to suppress MIDI clock just on for a specific instrument, a specific version of that instrument. You know, one instance that you have in here. You might want it working in the others. You might want to be suppressing it if you were using it twice in here, so you weren't getting multiple MIDI clocks coming through, I would imagine. Anyway, that one we've already discussed quite a bit. Aha, here we go. Now we're going into the deep waters. Get your high boots on. So this is where you got to get the sysx coming in, and there are some sysx that are standard sysx messages, so you can match those that way, or you can type it in. And in which case, when it gets this message, we'll just throw a message in there. Any this is FO would be any sysx arrives. Then you can send it on a channel, this course or an NRPN or channel pressure or pitch bend signal, and change what its value is going to be. So kind of a way of saying you got some sysx coming in. Suddenly all your notes go ring, pitch bend up. But and then it suppresses or doesn't, actually passing the sysx. Interesting. So again, another name for that idea of passing it through. All right. So these look pretty complex. And RPNs are used a ton in hardware synths, and RPNs too, of course. All righty. Well, all right. Anybody have some thoughts on when you would use this? When would you want an incoming sysx? When would you even get an incoming? Oh, some keyboards send sysx messages from their buttons and from their knobs even. I have some really old ones that a button press sends a sysx signal. It doesn't send a controller message. And to have that be converted to what you'd intended it to do might be pretty handy. And it might give new life to some really old controllers that didn't have controller messages coming from its buttons.
I use that with my EMU keyboard I had.
Yeah. Okay. So it has master volume. So these must have been pretty standard sysx that were sent a lot by things, by different items. Let's see. Let's put one of those in. Value so I see the value lets you listen to a range, I take it. Not sure. In other words, makes it universal, so it works with any piece of hardware. Well, anyway, so that's the use I can think of it. I'd forgotten all about that fact that so many of my older ones, the Wave Station and this Kawai thing, send out that sysx out of their buttons. Hadn't thought about that in years. Alrighty. So we can get back the decoder, encoder. Oh, encoder lets you use control numbers to go the other direction. Generate some sysx that you send out. Well, that's pretty darn cool. And then you've got the patcher. And that takes sysx and converts it to other sysx. Okay. Really be a sysx maniac around here. Transpose, of course, we covered that in the other places, but it can also be transposing a range of notes, a very narrow range, just for that instance of the input and transpose just that narrow range, and even send it to a new channel. That's kind of neat. So if you're doing layers, you could have the input come in and change the transposition so that you can have that bass clarinet playing along with tuba or bassoon or something in unison, but make it so you're using the same key, even though that you want them an octave apart or something like that for layers. That's nifty neato. Alrighty, we're almost done with the list, so don't fall asleep yet. Velocity gate, eh? What are you going to do with this? Velocity range, this to that. The delta, goes to a new channel. All right, now, when you start using words like delta, I mean, I was in a band called Delta back in the 70s, so I'm lost now. I don't know any other meaning of the word. Any thoughts what velocity delta would deal with?
Yeah, this filter, the point was that if you play softly, you could map it to something where you would play one instrument. If you played softly, like you played a hammer, and if you played really loud, you would go to another instrument, and then you can use the delta to adjust the soft tones to be louder on the that instrument. But I have no idea when you would use this in real life.
Well, it sounds almost like sample triggers, a velocity triggering of samples.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could use this to reduce velocity on the upper part, because maybe it's too loud. So you can set the negative delta to change the velocity to a more usable value.
Yeah, that too.
I see that you can also set a negative delta value. So I guess you could reduce the velocity after the split. Let's say, I don't know, just an idea.
But then you would use the other filter we talked about before, where you could have settings for specific note ranges.
Was it this one? No, that's note map. Gee, we didn't even cover this one. Forgot.
In any case, suppose you want to limit your instrument to 0 to 60 in velocity, but you want to play it at a real velocity above 60. Then you play soft, but you add a delta of, let's say, 40 or something like that to increase the velocity which arrives to the instrument. Don't know.
Mm-hmm. That might also be velocity controller curve.
This is, then you'd have, then you would have to scale it as well as delta it.
I see.
Otherwise, you'd get jumps backwards, right?
He used the word gate. I always think maybe if you play softer notes, you don't want them to trigger. You have to hit harder to.
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling that it's literally intended to send it to a different channel, or to not send.
Yes.
And
yes.
And as if it were like velocity switching in a sampler. That when you play louder, it's going to play a different sound altogether.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And the delta kind of sets how loud that sound's going to be.
That's useful.
Now the delta is applied afterwards to adjust it. So if you say if you use this velocity gate, you can set the velocity range to say 63 to 127.
Yeah.
And then set the delta to 0. Then it will just keep the velocity. But if you then say that make another velocity gate that goes from 0 to 62,
yeah,
then you would want to have the velocity delta to be 63 or 127. I don't know exactly how that delta works. To
Mhm.
compensate and get the velocity scaled up on the softly played notes, because you want to play another instrument. You don't want it to be soft. You want it to be another instrument.
Mhm. Well, you
But
can play
again,
another instrument,
yeah,
and you could do this, and you can pass through the original. Press the out of range notes. Oh, let's press out of range notes. If you don't have that checked, then you can still hear the other range. It's not until you get into the. You can hear the quieter notes, but it's when you get above this velocity, then now you're playing a different instrument on a different channel, or something else, or you're neutralizing the velocity with certain samples. One place this might be useful is like we were talking about the velocity triggered samples that are in some samplers where they have multiple different sounds, so the louder notes sound completely different than the softer sounds. You hear that, you get that with snare samples and tuba and horn, trombone samples where you get a blaring, a blat sound when you play really loud. So this might make it so that you can stabilize it somehow, so whenever you play above a certain range, you're always getting that blat sound by setting this up high. And so now, when you start playing loud, you always get the loud version, the loudest version of that note sample. See what I'm saying? That the sampler is going to always play the loudest version. And so I could set it, if I didn't like that, never wanted it to hear that trombone play that sound, I could set it to 100. Oops. So it only plays that more mellow, loud version of the trombone sample, and not the full-blown one that's starting to blat. That might be a use for it, I could see. Does that sound logical? Delta is what, no matter what happens up in this range, you're always going to get this instrument, this volume. So we'll have to try that.
Hey, Terry.
Yep.
Down here, I think velocity delta means how fast your fishing boat will go down the Mississippi.
Oh, I hear. Yeah, it depends on the weather and things. Yeah, there's a lot to it. Okay, velocity controller curve. Again, we talked about that. We can set the controller and stuff. But look at all the choices they give you. Note velocity aftertouch, note velocity, just the black note and aftertouch, black note by itself, just the white notes. Wow. Well, how many people complain about the black keys they're too short, so I can't get the expression out of them. You know what I mean? So this would let you change the curve of just the black keys and their aftertouch, or the white keys, so that you could average out the feeling of them and get a feeling that felt more balanced. Because like on the MPK 249, for instance, it's got pretty short black keys. It's not like a real piano at all. And since a lot of people like to press near the back of the key, on a real keyboard that would be about, on an 88 key normal keyboard, it'd be about 2 inches from the back that you'd be pressing down. It's easier to press. Whereas you'd be pressing at the very back on the MPK, because the keys are shorter. So now, if only I could teach people to get out of those habits, that would be a different way to do it. But this way, we don't have to learn new habits, or even practice at all, which is fantastic. And so, anyway, let's see. Oh, aftertouch is another thing that a lot of keyboards, the aftertouch is pretty much built in. It's got this sensitivity range, and that's it. Ability to change that and change the curve of the aftertouch, that's a dream-like thing. Controllers, that's like Corky was saying with changing the expression pedals to have different curves. What a fine controller would be, well, isn't pitch bend, but that's down here. Oh, fine controller, some knobs, some units have these knobs that have the regular rotary controllers. They have a fine, or they have a button you can hold down to convert it to a fine output. Channel pressures for the aftertouch for the people that can afford it. Pitch bend, and then your RPN and RPN stuff. Well, pretty cool. That's a lot of control over the different curves. Pretty neat. And you can stack them. Have a bunch of these, controlling everything, get that keyboard feeling exactly the way you want it, just by stacking a bunch of these. Okay, I'll take it. And last but not least, I think, is the voice allocator. Well, this is used if you got a gig and you need a male vocal, but only the female vocalists are available to show up at the gig. Then this will do something. I forget what. Am I on the right track?
This one is something Brad also made recently that is used for monophonic. If you have a monophonic synth, then you can make 4 instances of that VST, of 5 instances or so. And then it is
Polyphonic.
split on more channels. So you can kind of play polyphonic. So the first note you play will go to the first channel.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second note you play will go to the second channel, the third note to the third, and fourth note to the fourth. The fifth note you'll play will go to the first channel again.
Oh, back, round robin. It'll round robin.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that sense, you get kind of polyphonic, and then you can just decide how many instances you want, and then make the appropriate number of channels.
Cool. So this is your input channel from your keyboard, and then you
Yes.
hold down the control button and select as many channels as you want to go out. And those
Yes.
are the different instances of the synth receiving on those different channels.
So
Yes.
that's useful if you have 5 mini moocs with MIDI retrofit. You can use that to play a chord on your minis.
Yeah, exactly.
You just need to afford the 5 mini moocs or something similar.
Dream come true from the 60s and 70s. And Omni, of course, just sends it out all channels, so you don't have to channelize. All right.
That
guess.
Behringer Poly D mini Moog is like that's what it has. It'll play more notes.
Yeah,
it'll
that's what I
play-
heard. Yeah, it'll do
Yeah.
poly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we did a pretty good job getting through all of these. Now, we haven't even started discussing all the different ways you can stack them up. But, well, we did. We started discussing some of the ways. But boy, that's a lot of options and opportunities, that's for sure. Okie dokie.
Is there like an overall theme of what is left out of solo? Is there like a pattern to?
Everything which is connected to live performance is reduced in solo.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Everything connected to live performance.
Yeah,
I see. That
notes and
the song, set lists,
yes,
your patches, the instruments. Got all the different things you can do in there. Hey, I just noticed you can actually randomize and morph right from a binding. Huh. What a concept. And of course, connect to it every bit of automation that the synthesizer exposes. This one really exposes a lot. Polsky is another freebie, and it exposes quite a few things. So that's pretty neat. The stuff that's exposed by the synth that you can get to from bindings even in solo. So it still gives you quite a bit of power that way. I mean, in fact, it gives you a ton of power. That's an insane amount of power from solo. But like you were saying, this all the stuff that you would need for performance is in there. Oh, that's one that you don't have in here. You don't have things like engine on load and stuff like that. You just have the basic inputs.
You don't have linked racks also. I don't know if it was mentioned that there are no linked racks in solo.
No.
So you can't share racks among different songs during a performance.
Oh, right. No link tracks. Correct. Yeah, you just have to keep loading in embedded racks. It keeps including them in your songs. But what you can do with those, you can still embed a rack inside of an embedded rack, inside of an embedded rack, do layers like that. You just can't put a linked rack inside of a linked rack. Yeah, all right, so we got a lot of power. Well, we went on for quite a while. This was a 2-hour session, so. But we covered all of the basis of those things pretty much. Hopefully whetted some appetites. And we covered some of the stuff about giving lessons. As you can see, Corky, I loaded in OBS. And I'm looking over there because that's where the other monitor is. Bring you over here so I'm looking at the screen.
That's fine.
Here we go. Okay, yeah. I've loaded in OBS, and I was going to show how it works as a webcam with Zoom. And that way you can use just a key to switch between just your camera and the Cantabile. But that's just getting fancy. I'm really just teasing you because you can do the same thing just using share screen and then turn share screen off, turn share screen back on again. If you're giving a lesson, because all you really want to be bothered with is that camera. But I just wanted to show how with OBS, though, the benefit of that is that you can have the camera in back of your keyboard up in the air, and you know how they have the swivel where you can point it right down, and then OBS lets you flip it upside down. In Zoom, there's mirror that just flips it left and right. What you need is that one where you can flip it upside down, and Zoom doesn't give you that. So that's something you can do with OBS. That's kind of cool. And one thing you do have to know, though, if you're using OBS as a virtual camera with Zoom, in backgrounds and filters, you've got to make sure you click to none. So my planet cannot exist in the Zoom thing if I'm using OBS as a virtual camera. I've got to get rid of it because there's no green screen in the virtual camera. That's why. So all you see is the background. It obscures the other. Anyhow. All right, well, the meeting just ended itself. Don't ask me how. I probably went over time. But there you go. And we covered a lot. We finished, definitely finished. And so that's the end of this webinar. All right, take care.